Hi everybody, I'm Renza from Diabetes Australia and I'm here for our next Tech Talk, where I speak very briefly about the latest in diabetes technology in Australia, or a topic to do with diabetes technology in Australia. Here's a buzzword for you: interoperability. It's a great one if you're playing Scrabble. Interoperability is a word that we use when we're talking about different devices speaking to each other, which is great, because what that means is that there is less need for me as a user, or you as a user, to actually put in different data into different devices. So where we hear about it probably most in diabetes is when an insulin pump and a continuous glucose monitor or a flash glucose monitor, the dream of them speaking to each other. And why that is so wonderful is for a number of reasons. One, it could just be about data sharing between the two, which is fantastic. And especially if you've got an insulin pump that is able to do all sorts of fancy calculations, it needs all the data available. It needs to know your glucose level at the moment. It needs to know how much insulin you've already got in your system, and it needs to know how many carbohydrates you're about to eat. So if you have got an insulin pump that speaks to a glucose monitor, whether that's a blood glucose monitor actually or a continuous glucose monitor, that data gets transferred automatically into your pump, so you don't actually need to enter it. Now, you might be thinking, well, who cares? It's only just putting in a couple of numbers in. You're right, that's all it is. However, some things to think about: user error. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get numbers wrong. And also, it's one less thing to do. And in diabetes, where there is so much to do, I will take any moment where there are fewer things that I actually have to do and where devices are doing it for me. So that is one way that we talk about it. It's also fantastic as pumps are becoming more sophisticated, and they have some very, very nifty and very, very clever algorithms in there that automate insulin delivery. So all of that data needs to go into the pump so that it can do some very fancy calculations, because insulin pumps are far, far smarter than I am. And then it will know how much insulin it needs to be delivered. It needs to deliver in an automated way. Again, less need for the user to do it. So that's pumps. What we need to remember, though, is there are about 30,000 Australians currently with diabetes currently using insulin pumps, just under. There are a lot more people with diabetes who use insulin, though, right? And most of them, therefore, are using insulin pens to deliver that insulin. One of the things that there is a lot of work happening in at the moment is connected pens. So it's the same idea, where an insulin pen will be connected to a glucose monitoring device. Now, what is so great about this is that whilst it won't automate insulin delivery, it's a pen, you still need to give it to yourself. However, it will be able to advise you of the dose that you need. So again, it will be keeping in its very clever memory things like how much insulin you've already given with that pen, when you gave that, so it can think about how much insulin is still working in your system, and then also what your glucose levels are, and then it will be able to make a calculation and tell you, you now need to dial up and give yourself this many units of insulin. Remembering that the vast majority of people who take insulin in Australia and around the world are using insulin pens or syringes. This is truly remarkable, and it's going to be something that for people, it makes things easier. There has been a device around for some time now called Timesulin. It's available in Australia, and it actually just clips on to any disposable insulin pen that is currently available in Australia. So whatever insulin you're using, if you're using the disposable ones, the Timesulin cap sits on the top of them. And what it does is it remembers your last dose and the time. Now, I've been using a pump for a very, very long time, but I do remember that for the 3 years that I was using insulin pens, there were so many times that I couldn't remember if I had given myself my insulin. Did I dose? Did I give myself that dose? Did I forget? This is a really terrific way to help you remember. Again, diabetes, so much going on, so many things to remember, so many things to do, on top of all the things you have to do in everyday life. Any sort of little trick or little tip or any device that makes things easier is a great idea. Timesulin is what it's called. If you Google it, you'll be able to find it and you'll be able to order it. It is certainly something that you might want to think about if you're using pens. Interoperability, things talking to each other, things working together, fewer things for us as the individual, the human living with diabetes to do. We're getting to that holy grail of having to do as little possible Of course, the ultimate holy grail might be a cure, but in the meantime, doing as little as we need to for the best outcomes possible, that's the technology that I'm really excited about. I'll see you next time.